The sun cast golden rays across the clearing where Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree, surrounded by his disciples. Each disciple sat in quiet contemplation, their minds seeking peace and understanding through the teachings of the Enlightened One. A young woman appeared, her face shadowed by distress, her steps hesitant as she approached Buddha with folded hands. "Buddha," she began, her voice trembling, "I am bound to a relationship that fills my days with sorrow and my nights with anguish." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of unspoken pain, drawing the attention of those gathered. "I have loved deeply," she continued, "yet my heart clings to someone who brings me nothing but suffering and despair." Buddha met her gaze with eyes of serene compassion, his voice steady and soft as he addressed her. "Tell me, child," he began, "what holds you to this bond when it so clearly burdens your heart and spirit?" Tears formed in her eyes as she spoke, her voice thick with conflicting emotions. "It is the hope," she said, "the hope that things will change, that love will blossom again as it once did." The woman paused, her hands trembling as she clasped them tightly together. "Memories of joy and the promises made in moments of happiness keep me bound to this pain." Buddha inclined his head slightly, his gaze unbroken, as he listened with deep understanding. "Hope can be a beacon," he said, "but it can also be a shackle, chaining us to the illusion of permanence." He gestured to the ground before him, where a small pile of stones rested. "Imagine, child, that you carry these stones with you on your journey. With each step, they grow heavier, slowing your progress. Would you trust the whispers of the wind over the clarity of the sun?" The Buddha asked, his tone thoughtful. "No, Blessed One," Ananda replied, shaking his head. Buddha nodded slowly, acknowledging the complexity of her struggle. "Indeed," he replied, "they are not without meaning, yet their weight prevents you from walking freely along the path of peace." He reached for a stone, holding it in his palm, and continued, "Each memory, each hope, is like this stone. When held onto tightly, it becomes a burden rather than a treasure." The woman lowered her gaze, her voice soft as she confessed, "I fear that letting go means losing a part of myself, as though I would become incomplete." Buddha placed the stone back onto the pile and folded his hands together. "You are not the stones you carry," he said, "nor are you the memories or the hopes that bind you." His voice deepened with gentle authority as he explained, "Your essence is like the river that flows, ever changing, ever adapting, yet always moving toward the ocean of liberation." One of the disciples, observing the exchange in thoughtful silence, spoke up with a question of his own. "Master," he asked, "how can we discern when to let go and when to hold on to such attachments?" Buddha turned his gaze to the disciple, his eyes gleaming with the wisdom of countless teachings. "Ask yourself this, dear one," he said, "does holding on nurture your spirit, or does it deplete the wellspring of your being?" He raised his hand, pointing to the horizon where the river met the distant mountains. "The river flows not because it clings to the stones within it, but because it allows them to fall away." The young woman lifted her face, her expression one of tentative hope mixed with uncertainty. "But, Buddha," she implored, "how does one summon the courage to release what has become a part of their very soul?" Buddha regarded her intently, the stillness of his presence magnifying the weight of his words. "Courage is not the absence of fear," he began, "but the willingness to face it, to walk through it with clarity." He extended his hand toward the riverbank nearby, where the flowing water sparkled in the sunlight. "Watch the river, child, and see how it dances over the rocks, carving its own path while leaving behind what impedes it." The woman turned to the river, its constant motion captivating her, as though it spoke directly to her heart. "I see the river flows," she murmured, "but the rocks remain steadfast, unmoved by its passage. How does the river not grow weary?" Buddha smiled faintly, the corners of his lips curving in a manner both reassuring and wise. The river does not resist, he explained, nor does it seek to move the rocks. It flows because that is its nature. He paused, allowing the significance of his words to settle over the gathering. So too is it your nature to seek peace, to move forward with grace and intention. The disciples exchanged thoughtful glances, each reflecting on their own struggles and attachments. As the young woman returned her focus to Buddha, "But what if I stumble? Buddha? What if I falter in my resolve and the pain overwhelms me once more?" Buddha leaned forward slightly, his posture conveying both reassurance and an invitation to deeper understanding. "Stumbling is not failure," he said, "but a reminder of your humanity and a chance to rise stronger." His voice softened, a note of profound compassion coloring his words. Even the river ebbs and flows, yet it never ceases in its journey to the ocean. The woman wiped her tears with trembling hands, her heart swelling with a mixture of longing and resolve. "I wish to be like the river," she whispered, "to flow with purpose and release the burdens that weigh me down." Buddha regarded her with quiet approval, his silence speaking volumes before he offered his final thought. "Then, child," he said, "begin by setting down one stone. Let its weight leave your grasp, and feel the freedom it brings." The woman bent down and picked up a stone from the ground, holding it tightly before slowly releasing it. As the stone fell to the earth, a sense of lightness washed over her, as though her spirit had been unburdened. The disciples watched in silent reverence, their own hearts stirred by the profound simplicity of the act. The young woman turned to Buddha, her face alight with the first glimmers of peace. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady with newfound courage. Buddha inclined his head, his expression serene and knowing. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the clearing, the woman departed, her steps lighter, her heart emboldened by the teachings she had received. And as the day gave way to twilight, the disciples remained, their hearts and minds alight with the timeless wisdom of their teacher. The night settled over Jetavana, but within Ananda's heart, a new dawn had begun. Illuminated by the Buddha's teachings, another day dawned in Jetavana, the forest alive with birdsong and the gentle rustle of leaves in the morning breeze. The morning sunlight streamed through the leaves, casting dappled shadows across the ground and illuminating the Buddha's face. A woman approached the assembly, her steps deliberate, her expression troubled as she bowed before Buddha with folded hands. Beside her stood a man, his posture stiff, his face clouded with a heaviness that mirrored her own. The Buddha greeted them with the warmth and quiet strength that defined his presence. Inviting them to speak, "Master," said the woman, her voice steady yet laced with uncertainty, "we are both caught in bonds that cause suffering and pain." The man nodded silently, his eyes fixed on the ground, unwilling or unable to meet Buddha's gaze. "Our hearts ache," she continued, "and yet, we remain tied to those who bring us sorrow, unable to break free." Her words hung in the air like a plea for understanding, a yearning to find answers in the face of their anguish. The Buddha regarded them with compassion, his gaze steady and penetrating, his voice calm and profound as he began. "The courage to let go," he said, "is a path often shrouded in fear and uncertainty, yet it is essential for peace." He gestured to the flowing river nearby, its waters glistening under the gentle light of the sun. "The river does not cling," Buddha continued, "nor does it resist the rocks that lie in its path. It simply flows." The woman looked toward the river, her face contemplative as she spoke softly, "But the rocks remain unmoved, Buddha, and the river flows past them unchanged." The Buddha inclined his head, his expression one of quiet agreement, as he replied, "Indeed, the rocks remain, but the river finds its way around them, carrying nothing but its own essence forward." He paused, allowing the truth of his words to settle over them. Before continuing with unwavering conviction, "So too must you find your way forward," he said, letting go of that which weighs you down and embracing freedom. The woman lowered her gaze, her voice trembling as she said, "It is so difficult, Buddha, to release what feels like a part of oneself." Buddha raised his hand, his gesture measured and deliberate, as he pointed to the horizon. "Consider the bird in its cage," he said, singing songs of freedom yet fearing to step through the open door. He paused briefly, his voice steady as he continued, "The bird's courage comes not from its wings but from its decision to embrace the vast skies beyond." The man finally lifted his gaze, his voice quiet and strained as he spoke. "But what if the skies are not welcoming, Buddha? What if they bring only storms and loneliness?" The Buddha turned to him, his expression firm yet empathetic as he replied, "The skies may carry storms, but they also carry light. Without flight, the bird will never know either." The disciples watched silently, their own hearts resonating with the wisdom imparted. As the woman posed another question, "But how do we find the strength, Buddha, when fear grips us so tightly that it feels insurmountable?" Buddha leaned forward slightly, his posture conveying both reassurance and an invitation to deeper understanding. "Fear is a shadow," he said, "that grows when we turn away but diminishes when we face it with courage." He paused again, allowing the significance of his words to sink in, before adding, "Strength arises not from the absence of fear but from the willingness to walk through it." Step by step, the woman's expression softened, her shoulders relaxing as she pondered Buddha's words, the weight of her struggle easing slightly. The man remained silent, his brow furrowed, as though grappling with the wisdom shared and the doubts within his heart. Buddha's gaze rested on both of them as he continued, "To release what binds us, we must trust in the flow of life and the truth of our own nature." His words were steady, his tone imbued with the clarity and conviction of one who had walked the path to enlightenment. The river sparkled beside them, its gentle murmurs forming a backdrop to the profound exchange taking place beneath the Bodhi tree. The woman and the man turned toward the river, their expressions thoughtful as they sought solace and clarity in its unwavering flow. Buddha's voice grew softer, more intimate, as he concluded, "Letting go is not an end but a beginning, a journey to reclaim the spirit and discover peace within." His disciples remained seated, their minds and hearts deeply engaged, the wisdom shared resonating profoundly among them. The woman and the man bowed deeply before Buddha, their spirits lighter, their resolve strengthened, as they prepared to walk forward with newfound understanding. The sun continued its ascent, casting long rays across the clearing, illuminating the path before them. "Pain is part of the journey, Ananda," the Buddha said. "It teaches us and deepens our understanding of life's truth." The morning air carried the scent of blossoming flowers, filling the clearing with an essence of renewal and peace. A woman approached, her face radiant yet thoughtful, her steps confident as she bowed before the Buddha with deep reverence. Her transformation was evident, her presence marked by the peace and clarity that had replaced her earlier distress. Buddha greeted her with a smile, his expression warm and knowing, inviting her to speak. "Master," she began, her voice steady yet imbued with humility, "I have found freedom from the burdens that once weighed heavily on my heart." The disciples listened intently, their own struggles mirrored in her journey, their spirits uplifted by her newfound sense of liberation. Buddha inclined his head slightly, his gaze steady, as he responded, "Tell me, child, what insights have illuminated your path, guiding you toward this peace that now embraces your spirit?" She paused, her hands folded, her eyes glistening as she said, "It was your teachings, Master, that helped me to release the attachments and fears that had bound me for so long." Her words carried the resonance of truth, her tone steady as she continued. I learned to trust the flow of life, to let go of what caused pain, and to find courage in uncertainty. Change is not an enemy, Ananda, the Buddha said. It is the teacher that guides us toward acceptance and resilience. The river does not carry the stones along its bed, Buddha said, but leaves them behind, flowing freely toward its destination. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the disciples, ensuring his words reached each heart present, before continuing with quiet conviction. So too must we release the stones of suffering and regret, trusting the current of life to guide us to peace. The woman nodded, her understanding deepened, her spirit illuminated by the timeless wisdom imparted by her teacher. One of the disciples spoke, his voice hesitant yet thoughtful as he asked, Master, how can we ensure that we do not pick up new stones along our journey? Buddha turned to him, his expression calm and wise. His response both reassuring and enlightening. Awareness is the key, Buddha began. To discern what serves your spirit and what weighs it down with unnecessary burdens. His voice deepened, carrying a note of profound authority as he added, when you walk with mindfulness, you can see clearly which stones to avoid and which paths to follow. The woman raised her gaze to Buddha, her voice steady yet reflective as she asked, but, Master, what if fear returns, and doubt clouds our vision? How do we remain steadfast? Buddha regarded her with quiet compassion, his presence a wellspring of assurance. As he replied with gentle strength, fear and doubt are but shadows, he said, that can only thrive in the absence of light. Awareness disperses their hold. He extended his hand, pointing toward the river once more, his gesture deliberate and symbolic of the truth he shared. Observe how the river flows, Buddha continued, even as it encounters obstacles, finding new paths and adapting to the contours of life. He paused, his words resonating in the silence of the gathering, before concluding, so too must you adapt, child, trusting the wisdom within and the peace that lies ahead. The woman folded her hands in gratitude, her heart swelling with renewed courage and clarity. As she reflected on her journey, the disciples exchanged quiet glances, their own struggles eased by the timeless truths imparted in Buddha's teachings. Let trust be your guide through life's impermanence. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden hues across Jetavana, the forest a reflection of life's constant changes. His disciples listened with unwavering focus, their minds and spirits fully engaged, their hearts embracing the wisdom shared. The sun rose higher in the sky, its golden rays illuminating the clearing. As the woman knelt before Buddha in deep reverence, she whispered, her voice steady yet filled with emotion, Thank you, Master, for the light you have brought to my path and for the wisdom that guides me forward. Buddha inclined his head, his gaze warm and knowing, his silence a testament to the depth of his understanding and compassion. The woman rose, her steps purposeful and light, her spirit emboldened by the truths she had embraced and the peace she had discovered. As the clearing fell quiet, the disciples remained seated, their hearts and minds alight with the wisdom of their teacher. But how can I find inner peace, he continued, when my mind remains tethered to fears of betrayal and doubt? The Buddha gazed at Ananda with profound compassion, his presence calm as the silent moonlight reflecting on tranquil waters. Sit with me, Ananda, the Buddha said, motioning to the ground beneath the ancient Bodhi tree, its roots grounded in wisdom. Each heart present carried the light of understanding, each spirit renewed by the courage to release and to trust the flow of life. Thank you for watching. Buddha's teachings are always with you. Subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next video.